Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be going over a cool trick that you can play against the Philidor opening. I'm also going to be showing you how you can kind of get a nice little advantage against the Philidor opening. Just a quick little kind of preparation video, a short preparation video on how to play the white side against the Philidor. So if you like content like this and you want to see more of it, please go ahead and click that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. So the Philidor happens after e4, and then we have e5, knight f3, and then black defends the pawn with d6. So this is considered kind of a second best way to defend the pawn because we are blocking this bishop in, and our development is going to be kind of awkward for the rest of the game for black. Now this being said, there are plenty of players that will try this. I even know quite a few strong players that'll give this opening a shot, believing that this is a totally legitimate way for black to play chess. Although for the most part, it's not very difficult for white to get an advantage here. So the first thing that you have to do when you're faced with this is you have to strike in the middle. You have to play d4. You really don't want to just continue with kind of normal developing moves. You don't want to continue with moves like bishop c4 and knight c3, like really kind of just regular developing moves, because it'll keep the position closed, and that'll give black time to catch up in his development. Typically, when one side has fallen behind in development, like in the Philidor, where he's moved pawns instead of pieces, you want to threaten to open the position, because then this will require black to do kind of mental gymnastics to kind of try to keep this position closed. So the first thing you want to do against d6 is you want to strike in the middle. You want to play pawn to d4. Now black is going to have to find a way to either hold this pawn on e5, or he's going to have to find a way to exchange it. Now his options for that are kind of limited. Like if he exchanges, we can actually go straight into what's kind of known as the Steinitz variation of the Ruy Lopez. After queen d4, bishop b5, bishop d7, bishop c6, and then something simple like knight c3. This position has just been known to be slight edge white for a very, very long time. There's quite a few famous games in this position. This was Morphy's favorite way to play the position with white. We can get to the Steinitz variation another way as well. They can change up that move order a little bit. They can play knight c6, and we can do a direct transposition. We can play bishop b5, and this is also going to be the Steinitz variation. There's actually quite a few ways to get to it. So here they could play, e takes d4, and we're going to have basically the same thing. And then there is one more version of this where they play bishop d7, and then I think a lot of players will just, give up the ghost and just say, okay, let's just play the Steinitz. They will put a little bit of pressure on e4, and they'll make you take back with the knight. And this is also supposed to be slight advantage white. You basically did the same thing. You forced them to exchange on d4, and this position is also going to be slight advantage white. Nothing really to write home about. There is this alternative option against knight c6 that's pretty reasonable. You can also play d5, knight on c to e7. This isn't quite like a direct transposition to a King's Indian defense, because black hasn't set up his King's Indian yet with g6 and bishop g7. This gives white the option of playing like an early h4, h5. This is actually a setup with this early d5. This is something that's been favored by players like Nepomniachtchi in the past, and they've played this with the white pieces with great success. So this is another option against an early knight c6. You can play d5. So for the most part, like real Philidor players, they try to keep everything closed. They play knight d7, and then you should play bishop c4. Now, bishop c4 sets up an immediate threat. It sets up the threat of knight to g5. So if black were to play knight f6 here, white could immediately play knight g5, and we get kind of that fried liver-esque kind of attack. And that's going to be nearly a winning position for white. Now, black's options here are kind of limited if he wants to keep the position closed. Really, what he should play here is he should play c6, because it's going to be really, really crucial to keep a grip on that d5 square. It's also possible, after he sees bishop c4, the theoretically best move is just to give up the ghost and just play on d4 and play something very similar to what we saw in all these other lines. And of course, white here can continue with either knight takes d4 or queen takes d4. With the knight on d7, I think it's a little bit better to take back with the knight. And then after, say, knight f6, knight c3, knight b6, we just shuffle this bishop back to d3, and then say something like this: bishop e7, a4, a5, h3, just some prophylaxis moves, each side castles. We've just put our rook in the middle, and white enjoys a very nice, comfortable edge here. So this should just be slight edge white, and black's pieces are just still very, very awkward, and it's going to be very difficult for him to unwind everything in a really real way. But getting back to our trap, so this is what everybody kind of tuned into this video to see, so they tuned in to see the trap. So we play bishop c4, and like I said, c6 is really going to be the way to go here. You should play c6, and of course white still has a slight advantage here. White can play castles, e takes d4, queen d4, knight on g to f6, e5, d5, knight e5, and something like this where we keep queens on the board, but we develop, and white's doing pretty spectacular here. This is actually closer to major advantage white. So that's definitely an option. But if they don't play c6 and they don't play e takes d4, the move that's a mistake here is the move bishop to e7. And it looks super logical. The bishop goes to e7 and it covers the g5 square. Black is developing a piece, so he's trying to catch up in development. But unfortunately, he was already too far behind in development. And this move doesn't do the critical task of controlling this ever-important d5 square. And that allows white to win in this position. So white to move and win. Pause the video, see if you can find it. So the move is d takes e5, completely winning. So it wins material outright. So d takes e5, we've basically won that pawn. If we have knight takes e5 here, we're going to play knight takes e5, d takes e5, and we're going to play queen h5. And what that does is it threatens the f7 pawn, which is going to be either a strong check or it's going to be close to checkmate. If, for example, bishop d7, queen f7 would be mate on the spot. Or we're going to capture this pawn on e5. So like in the case of g6, we're going to play queen takes e5, and we're going to have a very important pawn in the middle of the board. We're still going to be up in development. We're going to be up development, up material, basically up everything we can possibly be up. So knight takes e5 obviously doesn't work. So what about d takes e5? Well, if d takes e5, again, it all comes down to that critical d5 square that black should have defended on his last move with a move like pawn to c6. In this case, we can win the game on the spot with the move queen d5. Just lining up that queen and bishop again, attacking that f7 square. And there is not a good way to defend the f7 square because this bishop, unfortunately, has blocked this queen's path from doing so. It's always the danger of having bishops on e7, is you're actually blocking potential defense for your queen to go to e7. It happens in the Evans Gambit as well. So here, black would have to defend f7 somehow. The only way to do it is knight h6. We would simply take it, and there is no good move here. You can't play g takes h6 because queen f7 is mate. Black would have to castle, and white would simply be up a piece, and white would be winning. So that's how you play against the Philidor. You know, the main thing is just remember to play that early d4, and when they capture on d4, you can take back with the queen, and you can enjoy a slight advantage against pretty much any line. But if they try to keep everything closed with things like knight d7 and bishop e7, you have this trap with d captures e5 that doesn't let them do so, and this leads to major advantage white in all lines. So this is a cool trap that you can play against the Philidor if your opponent decides to play very, very passively and desperately try to keep that position closed. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess. Thank you very much for watching.